Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, June the 21st, 2023. Happy summer solstice. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, that's the time when the sun moves from Gemini to Cancer and it's the longest day. In the Southern Hemisphere, well, it's kind of the winter solstice, isn't it? Because it's the shortest day. So whether you're in the Northern Hemisphere or the Southern Hemisphere, I wish you a happy solstice. Now, what I want to talk about today is Prince William, because it's his birthday. He's going to be, well, he is 41 years old. So I wanted to have a look at his chart, and I wanted to maybe make a few suggestions about his year ahead. Before that, I did notice with Meghan that there was this talk that she would become or might become the face of Dior. I mean, some people are saying the deal's not going to happen. I mean, I don't know. But I thought it was interesting because a few days ago I was looking at her chart where she has the sun in Leo conjunct Mercury in Leo, and I was suggesting that because of that conjunction, maybe she was not a very good interviewer. This podcast, the podcast contract was not being renewed, I think, at Spotify, and she was interviewing famous celebrity women, and she just couldn't help herself. That sun in Leo, that ego had to make itself felt in such a way that the people she was interviewing were not perhaps able to fully express themselves, and it was all about Meghan. That would be the sun in Leo conjunct Mercury. Of course, I'm not saying anything original there. That's what everyone says. But in terms of being the face of Dior, I said that I cited some videos I'd seen on or a video I'd seen on YouTube, which said that she might be actually quite a good influencer. Associating herself with a product, and maybe this Dior thing kind of fits with that sun in Leo. She's into herself, she's into what she looks like. She likes an association with a company like Dior, and so being the influencer, associating herself with a product, that kind of fits the sun in Leo conjunct Mercury quite well, particularly as that Mercury is making a fortunate sextile aspect to both Jupiter and Saturn. That seems to play out with the astrology very well. Of course, she can't be too into her ego if she's the face of Dior. I mean, I assume there are certain standards that you've got to follow. You can't be overly critical of certain sections you can't be overly critical in general, can you? Because it's supposed to be a nice, non-controversial thing, being the face of a big company like Dior. So she can't shoot off and criticize people who have slighted her. That was interesting. Now, as far as Prince William is concerned, let's have a look at his chart. So his chart, I've looked at his chart before, and I'm going to try not to repeat myself. In many respects, his chart is quite fortunate because a lot of things are in their right place. If you look, he's got the moon is in Cancer. The moon rules Cancer. Mercury is in Gemini. Mercury rules Gemini. He's got Venus in Taurus. Venus rules Taurus. He's got Saturn in Libra. Saturn is exalted in Libra. That's really really good. And also he's got the Sun at 0 degrees 6 minutes Cancer. He is only just a Cancer. If he'd been born an hour or two earlier, he would have been a couple of hours earlier, he would have been a Gemini. And his Sun is making a trine aspect to Jupiter, and his Jupiter is on the midheaven, and that's a really good signature of success. And he doesn't appear to be too into himself. He's kind of not really like Meghan, is he? He's got the North Node in the 7th house. He's got a new moon. He was born just after a new moon, and that new moon is in the 7th house. So it's all about other people, and it's all about service. I think, So in a way, that's quite good for a modern king. So that's his chart. As far as his year ahead is concerned, Saturn was getting really close to his Mercury. Saturn went retrograde about a week ago or something like that. Went retrograde at 713 Pisces, and that was pretty close to his square of Mercury. So perhaps when he felt Saturn going retrograde square his Mercury, he may have felt something. He may have felt a certain sense of being a bit depressed, a bit down, a bit negative about something. But we never saw it, of course, and it's quite mild. And then Saturn is now moving away from Mercury. Saturn will aspect his Mercury, make the square. I would have said, I think that would be the beginning of next year. That will happen, but it's not an issue right now. So as far as the other things are going on, I did look at his solar return. So this is a chart. This is a chart set for the moment the Sun returns to where he was when he was born. So June the 21st, it actually at 6:37 or 6:38 p.m. the Sun today. The Sun will return to where it was when he was born. And so, we can set this chart up and, as I have done, perhaps get some ideas about what the year ahead is going to be like. We can see that the Sun is in the 8th house. I think there may be a certain amount of introspection, a bit of fear there. But, I wouldn't have said it was particularly dramatic. In my experience, when you do these charts, these solar returns, they are pretty hit and miss. You need a pretty strong signature to be sure that something is going to happen. Also, we notice that the moon is moving to a conjunction of Venus. It's in Leo, so it's not the greatest sign for it to happen, but it does suggest a little bit of warmth, a little bit of relationships, something to do with Venus. I will make a suggestion when I look at his chart in another way. So that's a solar return. I wouldn't have said it's a particularly spectacular or dramatic solar return. I've set the solar return for where he was born, but Moon making a conjunction to Venus, that looks nice. Sun in the 8th, not so nice, but not a great deal is happening to the Sun. Okay, the Sun is actually quincunx Pluto. So yes, I think as he's got the Sun making a 150-degree aspect to Pluto at the time of his solar return, he's going to feel not quite himself this year. He's going to be. It's like he might feel that it's quite difficult to express himself because the Sun is him making the quincunx to Pluto. He's aware of his heavy force. I suppose it's like the conveyor belt, isn't it? That, life is a conveyor belt. His, his grandparents have just died. Um, and then now his father is in his 70s, and he can see, probably now his grandparents are gone. He can see his father is the next one on the conveyor belt. That conveyor belt. Then you at the end of the conveyor belt. That, of course, is symbolic for when you die. Then it's him. He's next, and of course he's got this issue of becoming king to worry about. Now, royal family got a lot of great healthcare, so Prince Charles could be king for 20 years, 30 years even. Is that right? Yeah, I suppose he could live to over 100. In the end, he's going to be king, and now his grandparents are dead. It's very clear, and I think perhaps that's beginning to hit home with that sun making the quincunx to Pluto. Now, another way of looking at this chart is using annual profections. Now, this is not a system that I claim to be a complete expert on, or an expert in any way, shape, or form, but it's just another way of using astrology. There are people around who are far more familiar with it than me, but just my general impression. So, annual profection. The idea is that every year you click into a different sign. So you start with your ascendant. That's the first year of life. Then you move through to the second year of life, and you use the whole sign house system. Now, I perhaps should briefly explain that, because I don't think I did last time I talked about it. But it's the idea that you look at the ascendant, you look at the sign on the ascendant, and everything in the sign on the ascendant is in the first house. So you can see that William has 27 Sagittarius rising. So that would mean that he would have Uranus in the first house and Neptune in the first house, using the whole sign houses. Of course, annual profections is a traditional technique, and many traditional astrologers would not use Uranus and Neptune. So likewise, Venus, he's got Venus in Taurus, so he's got Sagittarius is the first house, Capricorn is the second house, Aquarius the third house, Pisces the fourth, Aries the fifth. So that Venus would actually be in his sixth house, using whole sign houses. So the concept of annual profection is very much tied in with the idea of the whole sign houses, because I think you have to be consistent, because I think this was an ancient sort of Greek technique, and they used whole sign houses, and so you might as well keep a consistency of technique. If you look at the sign that's operative now with his birthday, how it changes. So this would be his 12th year, his 24th year. So his whatever goes into 12. So 36. This would be when he was 36. Would be covered by Sagittarius. This 37 would be Capricorn. 38 would be Aquarius. 39 would be Pisces. 40 would be Aries. So 41. So 41 would be Taurus, which is sort of supposedly the sixth house. But we do notice that Venus in Taurus he's got Venus in Taurus. And so that Venus has become really very prominent now. His birthday has happened. And so I would make one possible suggestion about what might happen. And I'm going to kind of mix with my house systems here. I'm going to mix my house systems. And if you use a Placidus house system, you can see that he has Venus exactly on the fifth house cusp. The fifth house cusp is children. and Venus would be a girl, perhaps. And Venus is also about children. Coming into the family that fifth house could be about childbirth, and so, him and his wife Catherine, they're in their early 40s. It's Catherine, her biological clock hasn't quite clicked to its end. So I think that Venus in the fifth house might suggest one more addition to the family in over the next year, and probably almost certainly a girl, I would have said, because he's got Venus. Yes, in the whole sign houses it's in the sixth, but in the Placidus houses it's in the fifth, and so the symbolism there, with the annual profection for the birth of a girl, or conception of a girl, or whatever, is certainly there, and it would make sense. Presumably, his wife is young enough to have more children. I know they've already got 3, but maybe they want a 4th, and so now might be the time they would have it. That's just an idea. I'm not saying that is going to happen. Now, one other thing, talking about children, that I did want to mention about Prince William, and I've mentioned it before, but I just feel I need to mention it again, is it's about the succession. Prince William's oldest son is Prince George, and so the general expectation is that he is going to be king after his father Prince William has gone. But I have this really strong feeling that Prince George is not king material. I've said this before, and I just want to quickly mention this because his chart. This is Prince George's chart. And I mean, maybe it's a great chart for many things, but I just don't think it's a great chart for being King of England or King of Great Britain and whatever. Because there are no positive planets in this chart. Unless you count Uranus in Aries, the outer planets, the traditional, in terms of the traditional planets, there are no positive planets here. The sun is in Cancer, moon is in Capricorn, Mercury is in Cancer, Venus is in Virgo, Mars is in Cancer, Jupiter's in Cancer, and Saturn's in Scorpio. This is just too negative. And I don't mean negative in a negative sense, in a bad sense, but it's just overwhelming. And then you look at this full moon. That full moon I don't like. Moon in Capricorn, opposition Sun in Cancer. That suggests someone who, I don't know, who is going to perhaps swing from one way of being to another way of being. And I mean, I don't mean that really in a psychological sense. People who have a full moon, the sun sign, the moon sign, they can switch. You can see the sun sign one moment, the moon sign the next moment. It's very fast. And the moon in Capricorn is not particularly fortunate, and its opposition the sun. I suppose what I'm really saying is that I think that Prince George is too sensitive to be king. I think he's too sensitive to be in the public eye in a major kind of way. I mean, I would guess that he feels everything. Look at all that stuff in Cancer, 4 planets in Cancer, not to mention the Saturn in Scorpio. I just think he is not suited to be king. I'm sure he's got many other talents. And I think that the sooner his parents recognize this, the better. I know he's about to be 10. I mean, interesting thing about Prince George, by the way, his sun is at 2959 Cancer. If he had been born, almost a few minutes later, he'd be a Leo. And it's like his father is right at the beginning of Cancer, and he is right at the end of Cancer. I mean, literally right at the end. But yeah, I think it's just would be important that his parents recognize this, because, we don't really know much about Prince George. We're not going to hear, the complexities of his personality. And I don't know. I think the parents need to recognize this and be very sensitive to how Prince George changes as he grows up. And I think, already, I know he's, he's not even 10, but I think they should start to think about it. They should start to think about maybe his sister, because things have changed in the rules of succession. It can now go. It's not. There's not this male. I forget what it's called. When the males get automatic precedence. You don't get that anymore. So I would guess that his sister or even his younger brother are going to be more suitable monarch material than he is, but he is not. And I just think the sooner this is recognised, the sooner this is recognised, the better. Now, you might say that what I'm doing, talking about a child, is completely wrong, but this is a child who's being set up to be king of Great Britain. I mean, that's a big thing. You've got to have the right king. I mean, and it's probably not fair on Prince George to have this pressure to be king. And I don't think he'd be a good king for Britain, assuming we still have a monarchy then. Yeah, so I know this is another year. Prince William needs to think about this. His mother needs to think about this. With astrology, sometimes I think I might be right. Sometimes I think it's a long shot. This one, I feel quite confident about this. I feel quite confident that I'm right. That Prince George is not a suitable king, and I mean, I'm just hoping that quite soon, over the next few years, it will become completely apparent and the right thing will be done. Although perhaps we'll have to wait until he's 18 before it's clear that he's not that he is not, that he doesn't want to be part of the succession. So anyway, that is Prince William. Now we look at today's astrology, and it's a Wednesday. It's June the 21st, 2023, at noon, and yes, it's a day of the solstice. So the sun is in Cancer. Big change. It injects some emotion into the scene, and yeah, that's a good thing. And the sun is starting to make a trine to Saturn, which we'll see in a few days' time. But the moon is now in Leo, and the moon is making a conjunction to Venus in Leo. And so, I mean, I think this is good for relationships, that it's good for meeting people. The Moon-Venus conjunction in Leo is not a wonderfully emotional conjunction. I know Venus is a relationship planet, but Leo, it's a fire sign. It's all about, it's about loyalty. It's about show. It's about showing our loyalty to the people we care about with that moon in Leo, and I think cheering them up. People do need to be cheered up at the moment. Moon in Leo is a bit fragile, because it's a sensitive sign. Leo is a very fiery place for the moon, and so people need to be cheered up. People need to be reassured. And I think today it's going to be very important to give people compliments. Compliments compliments do matter. I say that as someone I find it really difficult to give compliments. And in the past, I've completely embarrassed myself with my inability to give compliments. I've even got this problem with the dog. I mean, the dog, I've been told, my wife has been telling me that I need to praise the dog more. But it's important for her behavior. So yeah, that's an issue I'm facing at the moment. So maybe I'm projecting this issue on you. But you've got to lots of compliments today and tomorrow as well. Make a real effort to make people feel special. Another thing going on today is that Mercury is making a sextile to Mercury is making a sextile to Mars. You see, there's Mercury, 1843 Gemini. There's Mars, 1841 Leo. So, Mercury is a communication planet. Mars is quite an aggressive, assertive energy. So we can aggressively express our opinions. Okay, aggressive is a bit strong. We can be verbally assertive. We can tell people what we believe, and we can make it clear that we're not prepared to compromise. We're prepared to talk about something, but in the end, we want our way, and we can use words to get our way, but in quite a constructive way. It's a sextile. It's not a violent thing. It's just using words, using arguments, being clever, and getting our way. Now, as far as my forecasts for the 12 signs are concerned, here goes. Aries. Okay, Aries. You communicate very powerfully, and those that get into an argument with you will have cause for regret. You know how to enjoy yourself. Taurus. You're happiest at home, and you can beautify your immediate environment. But there's no need to spend money on expensive tat. Gemini, you're dynamic and you get your message across loud and clear. A short journey can lead to an interesting meeting. Cancer, it's your time of year when you can show the world what you can accomplish. But if you're not making money, you're spending money. Leo, part of you wants to be a hermit and part of you wants to be a prima donna. Can you be both? You know how to be charming. Virgo, you don't want to come out of your shell if you don't have to. But if you start being assertive, you'll get fast results. After all, Mercury, ruler of Virgo, is making a sextile aspect to Mars. Libra, it's a time of year when you can be successful in your career, provided you don't allow your family to get in your way. Also, try to make some new friends. Scorpio, you have a strong presence, especially in your career, and the things you say make a lot of sense. You have both emotional and financial wisdom. Sagittarius, you come across ideas that are in conflict with your pre-existing belief systems. You need to be open-minded. Capricorn, in relationships there is a certain uneasiness. Perhaps you and the other person have different priorities. It's a situation that will take some work. Aquarius, you've got to give other people a chance. They have a unique perspective, and their inflexibility may actually be a blessing. Pisces, it's a good day for preparing things. For example, stuff like cooking and decorating. But don't allow yourself to be taken advantage of. So now I'm going to move to the I Ching, and I got a single hexagram. It doesn't move anywhere. And it's number 7, the army. It doesn't move. So this is about working out what we want to do, working out what resources we have to achieve our aims. This is like seeing our aims as some kind of military strategy. We're going to need people to help us. We're going to have to show some leadership. What are our aims? What actually do we want to do? I think a lot of us are going to actually realize that we don't have any aims. It's all very well wanting things, but we have to have a strategy. Okay, we have aims, but they're kind of general. The strategy itself just isn't there, and so nothing much is going to happen unless we can develop a strategy. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.